Let's preview the Pacers season with some over-unders. Will they exceed their win total? Will Tyrese Haliburton up his scoring? How will Obi Toppin fit in? Will Benedict Mathurin finally put together some passing chops? We'll get to all of it with Will Furr today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today, a fun one, looking ahead at the Pacers next season by making some over-unders, some of which are from Sportsbook, some of which I came up with. We start off by looking at the Pacers win total and then diving into some stats for individual players and the team as a whole. And who better to do that with than friend of the pod, Will Furr, who's been on all the time. We get into a ton of stuff. Will the Pacers exceed their win total? Will Tyrese Haliburton increase his scoring? How will Obi Toppin fit in? Could Andrew Nembhard move into a bigger role? How will the Pacers defense shake out this year? We get into all of it today in a very fun and wide-ranging conversation with Will Furr. Really excited to get into it. Let's just get right to it. It's time for some over-unders, but not real ones, because I'm not giving those sports books my views today. Instead, I made up most of them myself to kind of define, I think, how some of the Pacers players' roles could change or be slightly different, I think, than public perception for a lot of the players that I came up with. Joining me to break these down and look ahead at some players' seasons via their stats or the team via some numbers, he's a returning guest, formerly of the Fieldhouse in 8 points, 9 seconds. It's Will Furr. Will, happy Sunday. Are you enjoying this time of the NBA calendar? Do you hate it? James Harden is apparently not going to get traded, but also still wants to. It's crazy. It's crazy.
I am certain that James Harden will report and everything will be just fine for the Sixers. He's a true professional. It'll be cool.
Over under my weight for James Harden on the first day of training camp.
I'm going to say James Harden's going to come in about 235, 240.
That would have been a funny topic if I had the time to actually think through what that looked like. We're doing Pacers over-unders, not James Harden related. Go check out Locked On Sixers for the latest on that front, which very weird and surprising to me. Either way, this is a Pacers show, and the only sportsbook related over-under I want to do is the very first one, and the one that the most people will talk about leading up to the season. Number of wins, number of straight-up wins the Pacers will get this year. And I did a show with Matt Moore a few weeks ago, kind of taking stock of the East and where the Pacers could land and how many wins it would take for them to get to where they want. And he had me guess the Pacers win total projection from some sports books. And I guessed 40.5. He said, no, that's too high. And I thought that was surprising. The answer was 37.5. As of this recording, that was DraftKings' latest projection. Why does that surprise me? Because they won 37 games last year, and they got Bruce Brown. Like, even if no one else gets better, is he not worth one win to me? Like, I get that there's some reasons to say that they overdid their net rating a little last year, but I thought that was surprisingly too low. So, Will, I'll do the low number first, and you tell me if I sound crazy. Do you think they would go over or under 37.5 wins?
Unless something horrible happens, I think that is an easy over.
Agreed. Good. Yeah, that like if Haliburton's the same player, if Mathurin's the same player, if Turner's the same player, like they didn't have bad injuries last year, but they didn't have good injuries either. Like, I don't get how they could be the same level of team. Like, Bruce Brown and Obi Toppin are theoretical upgrades. Like, alone, that was crazy to me. The real number, the one that I think is more interesting, is 40.5. Can they get to a 500 team? Because I do think they got better, but I also think a lot of teams think they got better this summer. So, like, wins will be harder to come by. And the reason for some downside thinking is, well, they were awesome in the clutch last year, and that can be unsustainable. And you never know what young guys are going to get better. You never know if Toppin's going to be a good fit. Maybe Bruce Brown is better on a contender than on this level of team. And then maybe they only did get like 1, 2, 3 wins better. Or maybe they actually have a bad injury. Like, they had a couple guys get hurt in this time last year, but they didn't have any like, oh gosh, they're without a great player for 2 months kind of deal. So I get why the number isn't like way higher, but 40.5 I think is more interesting. Well, where would you land on that? Because I think I have my answer, but I'm not sure.
You can say they didn't have a bad injury, but when Haliburton originally got hurt for that, I think 11 game stretch that they went like 1-10, that was, they'd never admit it, but they kind of flipped the switch then. And they're like, okay, let's play for draft pick. And Haliburton would miss games here and there. Miles Turner would get a hangnail and they'd sit him for 2 games. And it wasn't any bad injury, but it was clear that they were fine with taking some L's and trying to move up in the draft. And I don't think they'll do that this year. I think guys are going to play through stuff. I think, and unless, like you said, there is a 2-month kind of starter injury, the number that I would put it at was 41.5. So I'm going to go over on yours slightly, just a little. I think they will be 500 with any kind of average injury luck. I think it'll be close, but I expect them to be in that play-in race and a little bit over that mark.
So the optimist could give you 2 numbers right away to say over on the numbers we just said, right? And that's one is 56. That's the number of games Tyrese Haliburton played last year, right? Like that's almost exactly 2/3 of the season, right? Like a third of the season is a lot of games to be without an all-star level player. Granted, I'm like you said, he probably could have played more of them, but still he did not play in those games. So how much better can you be if your all-star point guard who changed the fortunes of your entire franchise and just got $260 million is actually playing all of those games? That is one optimist take. The other one is the number I cited a million times. The 48 games they played with both Turner and Haliburton, they were 26-22. That's a good team. That was like 45 win pace, 46 win pace, which would have had you in that 7, 8, 9 range in the East last year. And we've been covering Miles Turner for a while. He's not going to play all 82 games, but the number he plays might also be higher than when he played last year for similar reasons. So if they get those guys, not even like great health, like they both play 70 plus, but like if they both play 65 to 70, like that alone gets you almost all the way to 37 wins. So then you just need one of the new additions to be better or one young guy to take a significant step forward. And they have a lot of guys who could be candidates for that. So to me, 37, I was just like, like insulting is a stupid word for this. But I was just like, what? Like that really surprised me. And I think there's more ways that they end up smashing it high than smashing it low. And the way they would go below is just like, you can't predict it. It's just that it's the kind of stuff that could happen to any team where it's just like your one awesome player misses 2 months and you just have no chance. So I think my number is going to be 41. I like when the schedule comes out because then I can see like maybe they play a team in their tier like Orlando, but like all 3 times they play them, it's like a tough back-to-back or something. Like that could ding them down a little bit. So like my tentative pre-schedule predictions in that 40 to 42 range, but I think 37.5 is too low. And I think our numbers are at least where I would have the Pacers headed into this coming season.
Right. I would say this is a 42-win roster. We'll see if they get a 42-win schedule.
Yeah. Well, they do have the advantage, and they have this every year. I was telling someone this, like I write this every year, but it's always true. Just because they're in the Midwest and all these teams are so close to them, like their travel is always lower, and like it's easier to get them on. They never have the most back-to-backs. They don't have to be like stuck on some coast for forever. So it is nice for them in that way. And their schedule is never like terrible compared to other teams, but it can influence things depending on who and when those back-to-backs are. Okay, this is good. Good start. We both agree Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp are not happy that we are not screaming at each other over a big debate. So let's move to the ones I came up with and not the professionals who are clearly lower on the Pacers than us. And we'll start with a new guy, Obi Toppin. And this one is tricky because I wanted to think about his point total this year, and doing so requires thinking about how much he'll play, right? He's never averaged more in his entire career than 9 points per game. That was on 17 minutes with the Knicks, his second season in the league. He didn't shoot a bunch of threes that year, but his 2-point percentage was his career best by a decent amount. His per 36 numbers last year, 17 per 36 last year with the Knicks. So let's say he plays 24 minutes, which is about what I predicted when building out the rotation. That's 2/3 of that 17. You get close to, 12-ish, right? He had 19 points per 36 the year before. So the number I have for you, Will, Obi Toppin, points per game this coming season, over under 11.5.
I think he's going to be over fairly comfortably.
Comfortably.
He's never played with the creator before. When he put up 9, when he put up 7.5 in 17 and 16 minutes, people are going to come at me about not calling Jalen Brunson a creator. He's a self-creator. He's not a Tyrese Haliburton level creator for others. Let me clarify. Brunson's awesome. But I think
you are not allowed to say Brunson is awesome. I have learned while the World Cup qualifier friendlies are going on, because apparently it matters a great deal to people who starts for Team USA.
Oh yeah. I'm sure somebody's going to come in and tell me Haliburton's a fake all-star and it should have been Brunson.
Continue. Sorry.
I think he's going to get 6 to 8 points a game on easy dunks from Haliburton, especially if he winds up starting, which I kind of expect is going to be the case. So I feel like he's been getting most of his points, or at least half of them, self-created. And if he gets 6 to 8 off easy dunks from Haliburton, that means he needs to get 2 or 3 buckets off offensive rebounds or leak outs, things. I just think he's going to be in the 12 to 13 range pretty easily if he's playing over 20 minutes a game. I think Haliburton's going to be a life changer for him.
Hey guys, one short little break here so I can talk to you about FanDuel, because football season, it's here. Preseason action has gone. The regular season's about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner on FanDuel, you can get bonus bets every single time that team wins during the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you will get bonus bets for every single victory that team has. You can use your bonus bets on spreads, on some over-unders like today, on player props, and all more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, check it out at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I give you a stat that almost is breaking my brain now that I'm reading it right now. How many 2-point shots per 36 minutes do you think Toppin took last year?
Let's see.
It might be right in front of you, so you can just look at it. But this number is surprising to me.
It was really low, right? It was very low.
Really low. Yes.
2 or 3.
It is 5.9, which is still much lower than per 36 minutes. Like that's
per 36. I was thinking per game. My bad.
That means he's taking per 30. That means per 6 minutes last year, right? Like that's like a stint for a backup, right? He took 1 2-pointer, right? Like, and he's good around the rim. So the encouraging thing to me is something you just said, is that playing with someone like Haliburton, not only will get him shots, but like shots at the rim, right? Like his bread and butter kind of area. The question is the 3. Will he shoot 34% again? Is he close to the guy he was the first 2 years in the league? He upped his 3 volume significantly last year, but he might not have to with the Pacers this year. I think that's kind of a swing, because I think with the starters, on one hand, you could say, well, Hield, if he doesn't start, that's a lot of shots available for other starters, but like Mathurin's going to shoot more if he starts. So I think there'll be enough shots for me to go over on Obi Toppin 11.5 points per game. But I think if Mathurin is better enough that he needs the ball a lot, or Haliburton tries to take a step forward as a scorer, there are ways where his shot attempt numbers might just not be high enough, even if he is playing with Haliburton all the time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think some of the problem previously has been that, Mitchell Robinson and Hartenstein were not necessarily conducive to Toppin's game, and playing
100%.
next to Turner, and I think we're going to see this and not enjoy it on the defensive end, playing the 5 will give him a lot more space in the paint to get some 2-pointers.
Wow, I have a lot of other questions about the ripple effects of such a thing. Although I would get it. I would understand it.
Second unit, you throw in Nomura, Hield, Nembhard, McConnell with Toppin at the 5, I think.
You have intrigued me. I have never thought of this for some reason. You have interested me. Okay, I might go over just because of that idea too. I was already pretty close. Okay, that convinced me. Good. Next up, we go to a returning player, although one that I just kind of alluded to something I wanted to discuss with him, and that's Tyrese Haliburton and his points per game totals next year. Well, Tyrese Haliburton took 15 shots per game last season. It's a good number. There was this great story in his Slam cover story. I don't know if you've read that yet, where he talks about how he was meeting with Drew Hanlon, his now trainer. Drew Hanlon said, I think you're very talented to train you, to take you on as a client, and for you to reach the goals you want of stardom and and accolades. You need to shoot more, dude. And then he went out against Philly the very next night and had a career high and took like 20 shots, and he had 38. Tyrese Haliburton's an efficient player. When he takes shots, it's good. I get why he doesn't shoot more. He's naturally a pass-first guy, but like right around him in the 15 shots per game range, you're talking about like Kevin Porter, Bojan, Bam Adebayo, Josh Giddey, like guys that he is better than, quite frankly. If you get to a number like 17 shots per game, which I think makes a little more sense for a guy like Haliburton, you're not talking about Desmond Bane, Hero, Markkanen, DeRozan, like I just said, Brunson. He is so efficient that to me, he should shoot more, but I don't know that he will, given the dynamics of the Pacers starting five. And so I have now rambled onto why I have given you this prompt of Tyrese Haliburton over under this coming season, 20.5 points per game, a 0.4% increase. Do you think he goes over or under that number?
I think it's going to be under, and I think it's going to drive us nuts.
That's plausible. Keep going. Give me more. Why do you think so?
I think he's going to attempt right around the same number of shots, maybe a little less. I think there's going to be a lot of games where the game ends and we're wishing that he had taken 2, 3, 4 more shots. I think he's going to get asked about it, like he was with, you were talking about with Hanlon, like you're efficient, you should take more shots. Last year, he set his career high in threes attempted per game by like 2, a solid 2 threes per game, and he shot 0.08% worse than his career average while taking 2 more a game. Can we get another 1 or 2? Can we see what that percentage does? I would love it if he was shooting 19 or 20 shots. But if you're moving Mathurin into the starting lineup, Mathurin's a guy who needs the ball. Hield wants to come off screens, catch and shoot, things like that. Mathurin wants to dribble, face up, have the ball for longer. And I just think we're going to get out of the season wanting more scoring from Haliburton. I think he's going to be under.
So here's his big growth to me from as a scorer last year. The percentage of his 2-point shots that he made last year that were assisted was 24.7%. That was the lowest it had been outside of his in his whole career. But outside of his 51 games in Sacramento as a sophomore, that was the best stint or part of a season he's ever had. From three, 44.7% of his threes were assisted. Less than half. That's crazy for a guy who shot 40% from three. That was a career low by 14%, right? So he was self-creating his shots. He can create the level of efficiency he has with no help and be a guy with 60 point what percent true shooting? I should know this by heart. 62.4%. That's crazy. That's like nuts. He is an efficient offense just having the ball in his hands. And so that's why I always think he should shoot more. And he knows this. He has said this on the podium before. It's so like backwards to think about, but he says it's almost selfish when I look to pass first because it's not actually helping the team sometimes. And I know he knows it because he says it and he understands it and he explains it, right? But I just think his natural inclination is not to play like that. So I'm kind of with you that for it to happen, for him, it'll feel like pulling teeth and it might look unnatural, but if he gets higher scoring numbers, presumably on similar efficiency, that'd be good for the Pacers. So I don't really know. I think this one's really hard because it would kind of change the fabric of what he is as a player. But at the same time, the guys he plays with, like a lot of guys on the Pacers taking a step forward, like Toppin, like Mathurin, like Nembhard, like a lot of backup forwards. Their step forward would be like a little bit better as a scorer and like meriting the ball a little more. So part of me wants to say under also, but I think just because he's kind of he's growing in his understanding of like me shooting and creating the shot is sometimes the best thing for us. I think he'll take that 1 more shot per game, and given his true shooting percentage, that should net him about 0.6 more points per game. So all it takes is 1 more shot per game, and he's going to go over. So I'll give him the over, but I think you're right that there's good reason for it not to be, not because it's the right choice, but just because of how he's wired.
Yeah, if he can wire himself to have the understanding that oftentimes a good shot for Bruce Brown is not as efficient as an okay shot for him, or a great shot for Jalen Smith or Isaiah Jackson may not be as efficient as an okay shot for him. He's going to go over. He could average 24, 25 the rest of his career. It'd be great. But he is wired to get good shots. He's wired to be unselfish. And we'll see. It's hard to overcome, 15 years of basketball training.
Over under 10 more times I shift my weight because I'm sitting on the floor in the Cambridge Fieldhouse and my feet keep falling asleep. Over. Yeah. Okay. That one is really interesting to me because it would be a big change in the way the player plays, which is the same as the next one I'm talking about. And this is significant. Chad Buchanan talked about it on the ESPN broadcast. Ben Mathurin himself has talked about needing to get a little better at this. This sounds like a low bar to clear, but I think it's an important thing. Benedict Mathurin, assists per game. Last year, he was at 1.5, over under 2 this coming season.
I'm going to say under, and I don't like it.
Ooh. Ooh.
He had 116 assists and 152 turnovers last year, and that's not great. That's playing against backups. That's not what you want to see. There's a case that he'll go over here. He's going to be playing with the starters. So he's not going to be doing as much self-creation. He's going to be surrounded by much better scorers. You know, the Pacers bench last year was not optimal for him to get assists, we'll say.
Yes.
Scrappy players, very fun to watch, not optimal on the offensive end always. So he's going to have more assist opportunities. And I think that he could definitely average 2 or 3 with some improvement there. But I have concerns that the change to the starting lineup and facing better defenders every night is going to be a bigger adjustment for him, that he's going to be more focused on, well, how do I beat this team's second best defender instead of how do I beat this team's 6th man?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like, it's funny because he has the chances to just get that one extra assist so easily because he does draw in people when he drives. Like, he can get by his own guy a lot, which does shift the defense. He just gets tunnel vision. He hit the basket, and he draws fouls so well that, like, it's fine that he takes some of the shots he does. But to me, it feels like 1 assist per game is, like, not even that much of a brain switch. It's just like if you see 2 guys in front of you, someone's open, you know, and that happens a good amount for him. Like, I think 3 or 4 at this stage of his career might be a tough brain switch for him, just given what he's good at. But I think the extra half will be easier. And, like, the reason, though, I'm going to go over, but not for any reason that of, like, big belief that he's going to be, like, way better as a patch this year, but just because of how much other people, including him, have talked about it. Like, I think he's going to be thinking more in game, which could be bad.
Yeah.
Like I actually think sometimes when players think and they're not playing naturally, it's bad for their impact and skill. But, like, him getting those things to be routine and making that be just like a part of the fiber of the way he plays is so significant to me for his long-term growth, right? Then he's guarded way different. Guys, like, relocate differently when he has the ball. Defenders think differently when he's doing things. Like, it's so important for the future of him as a player. And I think he knows that. And the team has made it clear, which I think is good, that that's part of it. So I think there's going to be a concerted effort for him to be that passer. And maybe that's some of the tough love stuff Rick does with him this coming season, like last year. And because of that, I think it will be over, but not like 2.8 over, like 2.1 or 2.2 over. But that's still meaningful to me just because of how, like, if someone's guarding him, like, they need help because he's so shifty. He can get by guys. He just has to be able to use that advantage to do more than just, like, go hard to the basket. Because, like you said, last year, a lot of turnovers involved in that, right? His handle's not the cleanest. So to me, it's not like low hanging fruit, but it's close enough that I think he'll go over. But I almost feel a little too optimistic saying that after his summer league too, where that wasn't the case. But he's just so good at drawing fouls and shifting the defense that I think he can do it. It's just going to take a little bit of awkwardness at first.
Yeah, in his free throw drawing, I think you even talked about this on a previous pod. This is like the only people who've ever done that as a rookie are Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
Hall of Fame level players. And I think that I won't say gets into his head like a bad thing, but I think when you're doing that at such an elite level, he knows it. I am very good at this. I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to go get to the line. And that's a mentality. But he could get the over on this just through film room, just through sitting down with Rick or the assistant coaches and watching some of the plays and them saying, okay, when you get defended like this, look here. But you mentioned the thinking. There's a very obvious example on the Pacers that thinking gone wrong. For years, we've seen it with Miles. when Miles gets out there
Yes.
and plays aggressively and doesn't get in his head. He's amazing. He's a pick and pop menace. He gets those occasional driving dunks. It's great. And when he tries to think through the offense and read the plays ahead, everything just kind of grinds to a halt. So, like you said, that can be a bad thing. I'm really interested in this one. Some of the former Fieldhouse guys are lower on Mathurin than I am because they think that he's just going to be like a drive head down into the defense every play, turnover machine. And
But
I've
some of those guys
argued
end up
pretty
being
staunchly.
good. Some of those guys end up good, right? Not like awesome, but like valuable NBA players, right?
Right. So
Now
I'm
the hope
very
would be after his
curious.
start to his career, but I don't know. I digress. Yeah, it's just like get to one step in the basket and then turn your chest to the corner. Like someone's going to be there, ideally, and then it's there. But that is a hard change given what he's good at. It sounds like a low bar. All right, a team one for my next one. The Pacers defensive rating. I was torn. So I actually failed you because I didn't give you a number in this prompt because I was torn between doing a specific number or a league ranking. And I have opted to go for league ranking. Last year, they were 26th in defense, only ahead of the Pistons, Blazers, Rockets, and Spurs, a.k.a. 4 of the top teams in the lottery. The teams right in front of them were Dallas, Sacramento, Utah, Atlanta, Washington, Charlotte. Over, under, Pacers ranking in defensive rating this season, 20.5. To be clear for listeners, over would be a defensive rating 21st or worse, and under would be 20th or better.
20.5.
Yes.
Ooh, that's
yes, a good number. I was actually agonizing over what number to go with. I almost said 21.5.
so I'm going to take the over, meaning that it's worse.
Yes.
To be clear on
Yes, I had to specify because I can't be confusing.
Yeah, I'm going to take the over, meaning that it's worse. I don't, as we talked about, I don't think they're going to start Jarris Walker. I think Walker will have many holes in his game as a rookie, but I think he's going to be a menace defensively. Bruce Brown's going to help, obviously, but Haliburton's still not great. Mathurin's not great. If they're starting Toppin, I'm not excited to see Obi Toppin guarding starters. That'll be interesting. I think they're still going to have a lot of holes. I do think they will be better. I think they'll be markedly better, especially when you're looking at the actual numbers. I think there will probably be a cluster from like 14 or 15 down to 22, and I just think the Pacers are going to end up at the bottom of that.
I like that thinking. So what they have this year they didn't have last year is a credible 5-man lineup with just their rotation players. That's all plus defenders, right? And that would be Nembhard, Bruce Brown, Nesmith, Walker, Turner. Walker's a rookie, so he's a swing guy there. He could be bad at defense. But in theory, those 5 guys should all be playing for the Pacers every night and can defend the position that they were listed in that lineup at least credibly enough to go, yes, that's a good defensive unit. Now, the other 5 guys that would presumably be in the rotation that I didn't just say would be Tyrese Haliburton, Buddy Hield, Ben Mathurin, Obi Toppin, and pick your center. That is not as good of a defensive unit. So it's almost like down to how they balance the rotation in terms of minutes to me and how high they can climb defensively. Like they could really emphasize some of those defensive guys if they weren't up that number, but that would sacrifice a lot of their identity or their shooting or something. So Turner obviously can play in both groups, which is significant for the Pacers, but to me, I think that if you're playing Haliburton, Hield, and Mathurin a good amount, even with the inclusion of Bruce Brown and Jarris Walker at the 4, you're not going to climb as high as they maybe think they can this year. Like Walker growing, like I think he'll be an awesome defender. Summer League was just like, holy smokes, this guy's everywhere.
Right.
It was crazy. And he'll pair great next to Turner in the front court. So, like, I think I can get higher, but like the tier from 15 to 20 in defense last year, right? Brooklyn, Denver, the Clippers, the Magic, the Knicks, like that's some decent defensive teams. Like that is a hard tier to get into. And not that they can't get that, like at their best, they should be close to that level, I think. But I think they're probably closer to the defensive ascent to reach your like Charlotte, Atlanta, Utah range. And that sounds worse than it is. But like that, those teams, to be clear, their defensive rating was 3 points better than the Pacers last year. Like that's huge. That would make the Pacers way better. This sounds like an insult, and it's not because of how bad their defense was last year. But I think it'll be over as well. But I think it'll be like 21st or 22nd, which should still, if their offense maintains, get them close to like the team we described earlier, about a 500 team.
Yeah, and I could see, I think Buddy gets moved this year. If Buddy gets moved and they put TJ McConnell into rotation minutes, that obviously helps the defense. McConnell's nasty on that end.
Yes.
And if Jarris Walker earns more minutes than Toppin, that helps the defense. There are plenty of ways that I think they can. I don't know if they can crack the top 15, but they can get towards that. I could see a lot of paths to that, but the team as constructed, I would take the over. I think they're going to be like 22nd.
I would too. It's closer than I thought, but I think at 21.5, I'd probably take the over too, but just barely. All right, I'm going to cut my last one I sent you and go with the one you sent me because I think it's very interesting and potentially related to one, something you just said, and two, how people feel about this player. That's Andrew Nembhard, a very interesting young player in the Pacers system. Dominant summer league, looked fantastic. Tyrese Haliburton said he told the front office this guy should not be playing. He's too good. And then he had another great game right after Tyrese said that. And then he was done playing summer league. Good enough that people have been talking about, hey, like maybe he'll be the backup one and McConnell won't play at all because, hey, this guy's got to play. His defense is awesome. He can play multiple positions. I don't have to sell people Andrew Nembhard. If you watched the Pacers last year, you get it. So Will proposed this topic to me before we started recording. How about an over-under for Andrew Nembhard starts? And I guessed what number he was going to say, and I overshot it by a ton. This is good because now we can discuss this. I said, if you're thinking Andrew Nembhard could move into a starting spot this year, in my head, I was thinking that means one of Mathurin or Brown just can't hack it with the starters, and they need to make a change. And that also means Nembhard has presumably been good enough that they feel like he's the answer off the ball. And so the thing that popped into my head was it took them 27 games last year to pull the plug on the Jalen Smith starting experience. They gave it till like a little before New Year's. That seems like a reasonable time, a third of the season to make a change. And so if they did it then, there'd be like 50 games left. And that was where I came up with my number of 50. And Will said, oh, my number was 30. And his reasoning was more related to trade reasons. If Buddy Hield is gone, for example, or some of the stuff I just said happens, perhaps that could be a reason he moves into starting lineup. But that happened later in the season. So we can debate this now from the middle. 40.5. Andrew Nembhard starts this season for the Pacers, over or under. Will, what do you think?
Obviously I'm going to take the under here.
Well, I am going to also, even though I just made the pitch for the over, but go ahead.
I think it would have to be either a shockingly bad Mathurin season to the point where we're all concerned about the use of that pick on him, where they decide that, his outcome is Jamal Crawford, right. 6-man scorer, or they decide Bruce Brown can't hack it, like you said. But Bruce Brown is, I think, a much better starter.
Yeah.
You want him next to Haliburton. You want him to help cover some of Haliburton's deficiencies there. So I think it would be a hard path for Nembhard to start. He started 63 games last year, Tony. 63 games. Yep. But I do think, like I said, Hield gets traded. And if there are injuries, or we know Rick with this young team has not been afraid to mix and match. I could see a few injuries here and there, and maybe Rick says, well, let's see Ben off the bench for a little bit. Let's see how Bruce Brown looks. And suddenly we look up and Nembhard has started 40 games. Like there's a case to be made for it, but I'm going to take the under. I think it bears watching because he's good. He's good. He's going to get minutes. He's going to force the issue. He's going to make it hard to keep him off the floor.
He's good. He's young. And this would be another case to make. Like Bruce Brown can a little bit, I think, but like there's a chance that they get through 10 games and go, man, we have no playmaking with the starters. Like Haliburton can do it, obviously, but no one else can pass that well. And they just need someone else who can organize stuff or like be a secondary creator like Nembhard was last year at times. And hey, maybe he's the answer. So I don't think he'll start more than 40.5 times, to be clear, because I think Bruce Brown's going to start every game. And that's a big part of this. They signed him for a reason, and he's good. But I think that the question was good because it kind of illustrates like maybe he's a bigger part of this team's future than he's given credit for, kind of given the shape of the team and the position he plays. And he can do so much for them because And you could even say this for Toppin if they wanted to move Bruce Brown to the starter of the 4, which seems a little crazy, but Rick started 4 guards last year. Like there's probably 4 starters that if they got hurt, you could make the argument that Nembhard should be the guy who was in the starting 5. I don't think they would start him. I don't think they'd shift 4 guards instead of starting Jarris if it was Obi who got hurt. But at any of the other 3 guard spots, you could make the argument that Nembhard should now be the starter. So that's another way he moves into it. So I bet it's over like 20, but I think 40 is probably too high.
I had not even considered Rick toying with starting Brown at the 4.
I don't think he'll do it. To be clear, that would take an injury. I don't think he'll just do that. But yes, I don't think that's impossible.
Aaron Nesmith was the Pacers for a lot of games last year.
Mm-hmm.
And if he wants to play Toppin at the 5 with the 2nd, maybe Jarris Walker's at the.
We're solving a lot of problems that we're also creating on this show.
Yes, we are making these problems for ourselves.
There's a chance that none of them actually fruition. This was fun. We didn't even get into some of the stuff I wanted to get to with Jarris's playmaking or just general Miles Turner conversation about what his next steps are. But still lots of time in the offseason to dive more into those guys. Will, thank you for the time. Where can people follow you and your musings on the Pacers, the NBA, and other things?
You can follow me at Will Furr, Furr, NBA on Twitter.com. I'll give you the name of the website because I refuse to call it its new name. Or at Boots with the on Threads. That will probably be a newer home for me.
When I was talking with Tom Lewis last week, he called it Z. I thought that was funny. I might just call it Z. That was good. This was a great show this week. Progressing. Tomorrow we'll probably do another newsy and international show. We've gotten a lot more Hield, Tice, and Haliburton games. He, in fact, plays in 45 minutes again against Spain. Some more news to get to. And then I think this week, potentially, there could be some schedule chat, given how much of it appears to be leaking out one by one, which is totally ridiculous, which should be pretty fun. And I forget what the other show I have on the schedule is this week. We'll see. And I have a player who I will be talking to, but I don't know when because I'll be out of town this coming weekend. So we'll see. Yeah. Lots of fun stuff coming. Date to be determined on all of it. Thank you guys a ton for listening today. And, of course, thank you, Will, for the time. We'll see you all soon.
Thanks for having me, Tony.